At this hour, hundreds of thousands of people are descending on Washington, D.C. to take part in tomorrow's One Nation rally on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I am honored, more than honored, to be a part of this and be a featured speaker. I've spent countless hours crisscrossing this country, meeting some great people, meeting Americans who feel like their voices aren't being heard. My mission tomorrow is to speak for them. One Nation is an extremely diverse collection of the largest labor organizations, the NAACP, and hundreds of other groups who want to make sure that their voices are heard. What can be more American than that, my friends? Of course, America's fake prophet and resident hate merchant across the street doesn't seem to think it looks that way. Look at what Beck said about people going to this rally tomorrow.
And I mean this sincerely. Pat, is it not an FBI watch list under any other administration?
Oh, absolutely.
Under any other administration, it's an FBI watch list. This one is wholly supported by the president and his allies.
Beck is doing his absolute best to talk down this rally because he's afraid America will see a massive group of people who are rejecting his fear-mongering across the board. Here are some of the groups that Beck seems to be concerned about. The Answer Coalition, Code Pink, United for Peace and Justice, Veterans for Peace, Iraq Veterans Against the War, Communist Party USA, and the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, let's put the cards on the table. I don't align myself with absolutely everything these groups stand for. But this rally, my friends, is going to be a lesson for this country when it comes to free speech. I'm not giving up the microphone because I disagree with a few voices that are going to be out in the crowd. America is a melting pot of ideas, and that's how we celebrate our democracy. It's about inclusion, not exclusion, not about exclusivity. Beck's Tea Party wants nothing to do with diversity. Nothing to do with inclusion. Some of them demonstrate with racist signs and run around screaming about taking their country back. Taking their country back to what? This Saturday's march is about keeping our resolve and pushing back on the Tea Party message. This country belongs to all of us, and everyone should have an equal opportunity at the American dream. Ever since President Obama was sworn in, the Tea Party crazies and Glenn Beck have just soaked up the spotlight, made this a big thing about how we're not America. Tomorrow, all of that ends at noon. We're not going to let these naysayers mischaracterize what freedom is all about. My motivation tomorrow comes from people that I have met on the road doing town hall meetings. We were in San Diego about 4 years ago, and a gentleman came up to me. I was just getting ready to go up on the stage, and he was a laborer. He had a jean jacket on. He had gray hair. He had a hard face. You could tell that he had been working in the sun. He shook my hand, and I mean, it was a labor handshake. He pointed to his mouth, and he pointed to his ear, and he went like this. I said, "You can't talk and you can't hear." He handed me a sheet of paper. I put it in my pocket. I got up. I spoke to the crowd. That night when my wife and I were on our way home on the plane, I was cleaning out my pockets. You know, when you go on the road, people give you stuff. So I pulled out this piece of paper, and this gentleman had given me a note, and I was reading it on the plane. He said, "Ed Schultz, you are my ears and you are my voice. I can't talk and I can't hear. I have special equipment at home, and that's how I listen to your show. Please don't give up." Tomorrow, before I take the stage, I will think about that gentleman that I met in San Diego 4 years ago. And I will think about speaking for him. And I could tell by his handshake that he was a working man. I could tell by his handshake that he was a wage earner, and he needed someone to speak for him. And I have prayed so much over the years to understand where that man was coming from. And tomorrow, when I go on the Lincoln Memorial and it's my turn to speak, I will think about that man, and I will think about what he said to me in that note. And I still have that note at home on my dresser. Get your cell phones out, folks. I want to know what you think. Tonight's text survey question is, should any group, any voice, anyone be excluded from tomorrow's One Nation March on Washington? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. We'll bring you the results later on in the show. A man who I admire, who has worked hard for people in his life. Joining me now is Reverend Al Sharpton, the president of the National Action Network. Reverend, great to have you with us tonight.
Glad to be here with you.
What does this mean?
Means bringing the country together. We don't all agree, as you said, on every particular point, but we agree that when it comes to jobs, when it comes to education, when it comes to justice, we can come with a consensus of what is going to move the country forward. And I think with you and the labor leaders and civil rights groups, all of us that are really true patriots and trying to bring the country together, we can debate the particulars and we can say that we don't think what you're saying in this area, that area is right, but the general thrust of this country coming together around things like health care, things like education, and providing jobs, that's what tomorrow is about.
Reverend, when did this start?
In the spring, the labor unions and civil rights groups began meeting. I went to the first meeting in the spring of this year, and I think that as it progressed, the circle got even larger. The first meeting, we had everyone from Harry Belafonte and George Gresham of 1199 to Ben Jealous and myself of National Action Network. And I think that as this was driven, it was made a particular thing that it had to be broad. It was not going to be a thing of just representing one interest group or one race or one group. It wanted to really say one nation. And the diversity you will see tomorrow and the inclusion, I think, is something unlike we've seen in recent history in a divisive kind of body politic.
Do you think there will be positive results out of this for the progressive movement of America? I mean, is this really a turning point with all the negativity that has been out there, all the critique that has been out there about the progressive movement, and the obstruction that's taken place? We have seen 40 people in the United States Senate say no and stop a lot of legislative stuff right in its tracks. Is this march going to make a difference?
I think this march has the potential to, if we can tell those people tomorrow to go home and go to work. We cannot leave Washington saying we had a nice big rally. Washington's used to rallies. We've got to use it as a jump-off point to go home and get our communities, door by door, block by block, church by church, group by group, to organize around turning out in the midterm election and turn back what the Republicans and the right wing has predicted. Nothing would be better than to wake up November 3rd and say, you know, this whole Republican political tsunami that was predicted, it didn't come. There's nothing better than a storm being predicted and you wake up the next morning and the sun is still shining.
October 2nd is all about November 2nd. But I think, personally, this is a lot bigger than the president. This is about a movement. This is a generational push. And if we lose the majority, it's a big start over. It changes everything.
I think the president has said that better than anyone. This is not just about him. This is about taking us in a direction that reverses the direction that put us in an economic and a political ditch. And as he said, you don't give the same people that drove you in the ditch the keys to the car. I'm saying some of us in the car didn't even have seatbelts on and the airbag didn't go off for us. Some of us, our heads went through the windshield. This is about making sure that we come out of that ditch and keep going in the right direction rather than come out that ditch going in the direction of the people that drove us in there. That's bigger than one election. But what we've got to make sure is on November 2nd, we don't reverse which way we're going, that we keep going forward. It's bigger than President Obama. He's the driver. The direction is what we must vote for.
Reverend Al Sharpton, great to have you with us.
Looking forward to hearing you tomorrow and being with you on that stage.
No doubt about it. Now let's bring in Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell. Governor, good to have you with us tonight. This rally, the results of this, hopefully, will be people in Pennsylvania, people in other states across America engaging. And in your state of Pennsylvania, Joe Sestak is in a heated battle with Pat Toomey. Do you think this rally can make a difference?
Sure. I think anything that sends out a clarion call to base Democratic voters and independents who care about the direction of this country is a positive. And I think this can be something that energizes that base. We're trying very hard to get them energized. We're trying to tell them the good things that are happening. Health care, 8 or 9 important changes went into effect this month in Pennsylvania. We're telling people that. We're proud of what we've accomplished. We're trying to wake up and say, let's get out there. Sure, it hasn't been perfect, but we got to get out there and vote to protect our future. And I think the message is starting to get through. Joe and Dan Honorato, our gubernatorial candidate, have moved up in the polls from a very precarious position last week to being in the hunt, almost close to the margin of error already, Ed. And if we can keep the people being awakened to this, I think we have a chance to, as Reverend Sharpton said, duck a storm this November and have some really good results.
Ed, there's a lot of unemployed people in this country, upwards of 15 million people. They could make a big difference, and a lot of them are disenchanted, feeling like they've been left behind. How important is it for the Democrats to give them confidence that if the Democrats keep the majority, those people's problems will be addressed much better than what the Republicans could do? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's crucial. If that voting bloc was mobilized, it could make a huge difference. And I think we've got a very clear message to them. Who fought to extend unemployment comp? You were laid off because of what some greedy billionaires did in Wall Street. And who fought to protect you and extend your unemployment benefits? The Democratic Party did. We almost had no Republicans join us in that effort. That's the thing we should keep driving home as hard as we can and as forcefully as we can in that group. Who's got the best job creation plans? Look, the president's stimulus has done much better than it gets credit for, but the president's current plans are right on target for creating jobs, good-paying jobs that can't be outsourced right here in America. We've got to just drive home that message. I've never seen an election like this, Ed, where it's not a question of persuasion. It's a question of just making people feel it's worthwhile getting out to vote. And remember, everyone says the Tea Party's so wildly enthusiastic. Well, the last time I checked, Ed, a mildly tepid vote counts, one mildly tepid vote counts the same as one wildly enthusiastic vote. So we've got our work cut out for us. But this rally, I think, can be an important catalyst, a very important catalyst. But I want to say one other thing. It's more than just political, and I think Reverend Sharpton alluded to that. What you're doing, I think, can energize our base. But it's time that somebody, a large group of people, stood up and said, this is one country. We're not going to divide each other anymore. The horrible anti-Muslim feeling that was perpetrated. The best thing I've done in my 33 years in politics, we had a rally on a Saturday night in Independence Hall in which we had clerics of every faith talking about how the Quran was a good book and how our Muslim Americans are good citizens. Chris Matthews covered it a little bit on his show. It was the best feeling I've had in all my political career.
It is about inclusion. Governor Rendell, great to have you with us tonight.